For this particular review of Caroline or Change, we have re-invited one of our favorite guest critics, David Sheward, to come and give us his opinion on the show currently running at Studio 54. David, of course, is the critic for Cultural Daily, for Theater Life, and for his very own The David Desk. He's also a very dear friend and the former president of the Drama Desk. I'm going to leave you to talk about the current production. I'll see you in a little while.
Okay, so this production of Caroline or Change is a revival of the original production from 2004. It has a book by Tony Kushner, author of Angels in America, and music by Janine Tesori, who is probably best known for several Broadway musicals, including Thoroughly Modern Millie.
I think of her works, I think that one is my favorite. I did see the original production of Caroline or Change, and frankly, I didn't like it. I think I like this production, but I'm not 100% sure because I could not hear 75% of the lyrics in this show. And I had a fairly good seat in the orchestra. Mm-hmm. And my daughter was sitting right next to me. She couldn't hear it either. How do you go and see a show, a multi-million-dollar production? How do you enjoy a show? And how do you evaluate it if you can't hear the blasted thing?
Well, let me say in response to that, I enjoyed it very much. I also saw the original production from 2004. And I understand what you're saying. At the beginning, when the show was beginning, I also had a little bit of difficulty quite discerning all of the lyrics at first. I think that's the fault of the sound designer. But after the first number, I was fine. I understood what was being said.
I was able to discern that this was the story of Caroline. She's a maid working for a white Jewish family in 1963 in the South. She spends a lot of her time in the basement with a washer and a dryer that sing. Mm-hmm. And I think they sing very nicely, but again, hard to discern. Sharon D. Clarke is fabulous as Caroline. Really made an impression on me. The first time I saw the show, I did not like the character of Caroline. I just thought she was a very bitter, very mean person. I couldn't empathize with her. I couldn't sympathize with her. I couldn't understand why Noah, who is the young son in the family, wants to have anything to do with her. This time around, I'm still kind of puzzled as to why Noah again wants to be part of her family. Again, he has recently lost his mother and he has a stepmother to contend with and a father who is always busy with his clarinet. She, to me, was a much more sympathetic character, a much better person. Did I miss something the first time? Did they do it better the second time? I don't know, but I came away with a much higher appreciation of what I was seeing.
Well, in comparing the two, I mean, I don't think Caroline is initially, she's supposed to be a hard person to sympathize with. I mean, she does a lot of very unsympathetic things. The action that draws into the plot is that she's only being paid $30 a week. And this is, a lot of the lyrics say, $30 a week ain't enough. And what drives the plot is that Noah, the young boy, his mother is very angry with him because he leaves change in his pants and his pockets, and she sees it as, and she's his stepmother, she sees it as him being irresponsible with money. And she says, "Don't you know that Caroline is very poor and she doesn't make out very well? And what do you think she thinks when she sees you being so careless with your dimes and your quarters?" So she, in order to teach Noah a lesson, she says, any money that Caroline finds in your pockets, she gets to keep. And that sort of drives the plot because it develops, it sort of, Caroline sees it as being kind of condescending, why don't you just give me a raise if you think I'm not making enough money?
But on the other hand, she does need the money, so eventually she does take it. Part of it is she says, "I'm taking money from a child." Yeah. Oh, boy, I've hit a new low, which is again why I found her, and this was more apparent to me this time around, which was why I was more sympathetic to her. they end up having what I will call a Master Harold and the boys moment, that is Caroline and Noah, when he leaves a $20 bill in his pocket, and she decides, well, I'm going to keep it. A lot of questions that I have about this play. Again, first of all, why is Noah so infatuated with Caroline? Why did the stepmother marry his father? She was his mother's best friend, but she was living in New York. There doesn't seem to be much of a relationship between them. Where does this family get all this money? They appear to be living as upper middle class, but if he's a musician, we don't really know if he's a musician or not. We just know that he is always practicing on his instrument. And if he's being so careless, why are they giving him so much money? I mean,
well, it is autobiographical. It's based on Kushner's own experiences as a young boy. He did grow up in Louisiana, and he did have a figure like Caroline in his life, from what he said. I think that well, to answer a couple of your questions, I mean, I think that that the boy Noah is attracted to Caroline because his father is overwhelmed by grief. He's not very much of a present. He's not very present in the kid's life. And he's sort of drawn to her because she's very forceful and very strong and very determined. At one point he sings, Caroline is the president of the United States and she's stronger than my dad. So he's sort of attracted to her power. That may be the reason. Overall, I think the piece is, it's very complex. It's not an easy piece. Caroline's not a sympathetic character. She does express at one point during their argument, she says something very nasty about Jewish people.
Yes.
During their argument, in response to Noah saying something nasty about Black people. And I think it examines a lot of very difficult, rough issues, like relationships between races.
You do see that Caroline is very devoted to her own family. We meet her children.
Yes, which is the opposite of the white movie cliche.
And she, her husband is long gone. We don't quite know what happened to him, but she, from all appearances, she seems to have raised them very nicely. There's one of my favorite scenes in the play is stepmother's father, beautifully played by Chip Zien. I was wondering at first, what is Chip Zien doing here? And then he has this very brief but very potent role. And he's an old communist socialist, so he's getting into an argument with one of Caroline's daughters. He says, he says, no, you can't be peaceful. You have to be violent. And she's saying, no, Dr. King is showing us a new way. And Caroline kind of puts a stop to it, but it's a great scene. Yeah. And since it wasn't sung, I actually could hear it.
Yeah. It's also addressing, the relationships between the generations and the relationship between the races, and the daughter, Emmy, who is played very well by Samantha Williams, who I think might get a Tony nomination or a Drama Desk nomination.
Also, Caroline has a colleague, also a Black woman, also a maid, a bit younger, and I don't think she has a family just yet, but she's going to college and she's planning to make something of herself. I think that's Tamika Lawrence.
Yes, Tamika Lawrence plays Dottie, and it's interesting. The score is each of the characters is like their own type of music. Dot's music is kind of like rock, pop rock of the era of the early 60s. The Jewish family has their sort of Yiddish influenced music with a lot of the clarinet because Noah's father plays the clarinet. Caroline's music is very diva-ish, or she has this very big diva moment at the end of the act.
It's kind of like a Rose's Turn type. And the interesting thing is, when I saw that in the original production, I said, she's got, and then she just goes back to being a nasty person. Here, I felt she had it a little more together. She does enter friendship with Dottie. That's another question. My assumption is she's just jealous of her. So you are right there. She does have a nasty side, but to me, that was less dominant. All in all, she is a good person. And I have to say, I had a much better time at this production than I did at the original. I just wish I could have heard it.
I thought it really delivered a very complex, interesting. It had so much. It gave so much about race relations and the tension between that. I thought Michael Longhurst's production it had a revolving stage that gave several almost cinematic scenes where you were in the kitchen at one point, in the basement at one point, and also in the living room. all at the same time. So the stage was really, really amazing.
Just have to shout out to Cassie Levy as the
Yes.
stepmother,
She was
because
good.
frankly, in the original production, she was the one I was empathetic for. She was the one I thought was the most sympathetic character. Here, a bit less so, because her parenting skills really do need some brushing up.
Well, I wanted to go back to something that you guys said about the original. And I just have 2 or 3 points to make, because you have really gone over everything very well. I remember being not only moved by this the first time, but I remember thinking of how important a play it was. And now here it is almost 20 years later, and it's still an important play.
David, 1 to 5 playbills, your conclusion?
Oh, I'm going to say a 5.
I have to say I had a much better time
Mhm.
at this production than I did at the original. I just wish I could have heard it. And if I were to rate this on a 1 to 5 playbill basis, I could not give it more than a 3, 5 being the best. I could not give it more than a 3, and they're lucky to get that.
So lovely to have you back. And
Thank you.
Yes.
it was lovely to see you. And Charlie, I will see you again soon.
Okay.